Nicole sat alone in a small conference room, several floors up in an office building on the outskirts of the city center. Spread out on the table in front of her were the divorce papers that her husband, Tom, had asked her to sign. After much negotiation through their lawyers, he agreed to meet her here. She waited for him to arrive, again rehearsing the speech she hoped would make him change his mind. Her heart, already beating, almost exploded when Tom entered the room. She hadn't been this close to him physically in a while. Even when exchanging children for visits, Tom kept his distance. Smiling nervously, she began to rise. But Tom held out his hand, motioning for her to remain seated. He sat down opposite her and slowly sank into the chair. He looked at her, sighed, and shrugged. "Tom," she said, "thanks for meeting with me. I have a lot to say. I wrote this down to make sure I—" She reached into her purse and took out an envelope. She wrote his name on it by hand, in beautiful handwriting. With trembling hands, she began to open it. "Nicole, stop." She looked up. Tom reached for the unmarked envelope on the table. Her hopes rose as if on a gust of warm wind. Is her fantasy coming true? He wrote his letter. He will forgive me. He will tear up all these other papers and take me home. Then the wind died down and Nicole's hopes fell to the ground again. It was too much to expect, she realized, that Tom would say something so wonderful to her. Besides, even if he did, it would be wrong for him to start first. Hands still shaking, she continued the incredibly difficult task of removing her letter from the envelope. "Nicole, please, stop." This time Nicole felt a different impulse. Cold chills. There's something in Tom's voice. And what's in this envelope he's holding? "Nicole," he said slowly, "I agreed to meet you here. So I came. Now I'm leaving." "No, no. What?" While Nicole was trying to formulate some kind of objection, Tom put his envelope on the table and pushed it towards her. "Whatever you want to tell me. Well, read this first." Nicole stared at him, afraid to touch him. Meanwhile, Tom stood up from his chair. Well, you'll see," he said, turning to the door. Carefully, she reached for the envelope. As soon as she did this, Tom left the room. Once again, Nicole was left alone. She tore the envelope and looked inside. There seemed to be only one sheet of paper. Her hands were now shaking even more, and it was very difficult for her to pull out the document, unfold it, and study it. On the page, on the left side, were printed 5 statements, each numbered. In the columns to the right of the first 4 statements were the words true and false. It was a quiz, true or false quiz. She wondered if this made any sense. This is my chance, my last chance to prove I'm right and get him back. Nicole took the pen and looked at the first statement. 1. I have never forgotten your birthday or our wedding anniversary. This statement puzzled her. She never blamed Tom for forgetting these dates. What was its meaning? She read the statement again. Still puzzled, she placed the quiz on the table. Something began to linger in her memory, something familiar. Table. I was sitting at the table. Important dates missed. Then she remembered. She was sitting at the table with her neighbor Sheila. They drank coffee in Sheila's kitchen. Eventually, the conversation turned to family matters. "Bob drives me crazy," Sheila said. "Did I tell you he forgot about our wedding anniversary again? He does this almost every year. He doesn't do much better on Valentine's Day or my birthday. Always remembers Mother's Day, really. Never misses out on taking his mother to brunch, makes reservations weeks in advance." Nicole grinned. "It's easy for you to laugh, Nicole. You're okay with Tom. If only Bob were more like him." "Well, that's not entirely true." Nicole stopped and took a long sip from her cup. "Not really what? I think—" Nicole stopped again and looked out the window towards her house. Sheila leaned towards her, raising her eyebrows. "Come on, don't let me be the only sad, pathetic bitch here." Nicole saw that she needed to lift her spirits, or at least reassure her that she wasn't as lonely as she felt. "You know, maybe everything looks great from the outside," Nicole said slowly, nodding towards the window. "But if you— well, how do they say it? Appearances are deceptive." Intrigued, Sheila filled Nicole's cup and waited for an answer. It's like, well, last week, Tom was at home. I asked him to change the light bulbs. Night falls, I turn on the light. Nothing. He forgot. Glued to the couch, watching sports all day. I know he's tired from work. I didn't say anything, but I just felt. Honey, I know, Sheila said, putting her hand on Nicole's arm. And don't get me started on the dishes. Dishes, Nicole exclaimed. If Tom would just wipe his plate and put it in the sink instead of putting dirty things on the counter. Yes, Sheila replied, and imagine it. After I've done the dishes, put the kids to bed, I crawl into bed, just want to read for a few minutes before I fall asleep, and Bob jumps into bed, grinning, wanting to, be friendly. Nicole sighed in sympathy. It happened. The old grab the chest trick. Like this should turn me on instantly. Embarrassed by her frankness, Nicole covered her mouth with her hand and looked at her cup. Sheila, without being offended, simply laughed. Then Nicole laughed too. The complaint session continued. For a while, Nicole thought of her complaints as an act of solidarity and a bit of harmless fun. But as the complaints, including her own, became more and more serious, the laughter stopped. Later, when Tom came home and did something that made her angry, she was more offended by it than she would have been before. As the scene came back to Nicole's mind, she looked back at the first statement on the quiz. I've never forgotten your birthday or our wedding anniversary. Tom could not have known about the conversation with Sheila. This couldn't be his meaning. So why did this memory come to her mind now? Because that was the start of it all, wasn't it? Not really, I guess. The things I told Sheila, the things I complained about later, they had already been happening for a while. It was just the first time I admitted to someone else, before I even admitted to myself that I was unhappy about something. After that, I indulged this feeling of unhappiness every time I thought I had a reason, didn't I? In the counseling sessions Nicole recently started, she talked a lot with her therapist, Dr. Silver, about stress. The stress of juggling 2 children, a part-time job, sick parents, and a husband. Dr. Silver asked how she dealt with it. Not very good. I was worried about things related to Tom, not realizing how hot and tense the magma was becoming. When I finally said something to him, it was never constructive, just an eruption. Tom did not participate in the consultation. No, he wanted nothing to do with Nicole these days. But before things got to before where they are now, he admitted that he wasn't a perfect husband. If she was trying to give him a wake-up call, he said he got the message. But this was not a wake-up call. This was the signal for good night. Good night to our marriage. I told him it was too late, that I don't love him anymore. Tom always remembered important dates. For a moment, the statement on the quiz seemed insignificant again. However, given Nicole's situation, there had to be something more, right? Never forgot my birthday. Never forget me. Never forgot our wedding anniversary. Never forgot us. Like her, Tom was forced to juggle. He had the same children, of course. He also had a husband who exploded at him more and more often. He didn't have sick parents, but he had a full-time job. She constantly demanded his attention and energy. But he set boundaries as best he could. He made mistakes. He forgot a lot of little things. He handled even a few important things wrong. But he never forgot me. He never forgot us. I had to let go of the little things. And I should have put more effort into improving the important things. Instead, I just let everything fester, the same. All this time, thinking about him, I really forgot about him. All the things I liked about him, which I loved about him. And I forgot about us. It became all about me. Holding her pen to the first statement on the quiz, Nicole drew a line to the right and circled the word true. 2. You gave up on Italy. Wow, Nicole thought. Italy. What does this have to do with our current situation? This was, 5 years ago? No, maybe 4. Or 3. 2. Damn, I really don't know. Was my life before all of this really that blurry? Although it had nothing to do with Italy, Nicole suddenly remembered another time when she was sitting in the office, feeling blurry with blurry eyes, to be precise. It was a late evening at work and quiet. The office was empty except for Nicole and Jake, the outside consultant brought in to help with the project. The deadline was 6 weeks away, but there was still a lot to do. "It's hard to work at such strange hours, huh?" Jake said, typing furiously. "Yes," Nicole answered. "My schedule changes every week. But it's nice that I was entrusted with a significant part of the project, despite the fact that I work part-time. I do not understand this. You seem to be the glue that holds this place together. I am sure you will get a permanent position after the completion of the project. Maybe if we can handle it." "Yes, I think I better type faster." Jake started pressing the keys so fast that it couldn't be typing correctly. Nicole laughed. Being with Jake made the long, strange hours bearable, even fun. He was a joker and pleasant to look at, especially for a consultant. Unlike her usual colleagues, he made her feel smart, witty, and most importantly, attractive. Although he was never straightforward, she caught him looking her up and down several times. Tonight, however, he seemed distracted, almost gloomy. "So," she asked him, "what are you going to get out of this when it's all over?" "Probably just another one." He waved his hand at the scattered papers. "And not with someone like you. It's going to be kind of a bastard, and I'm going to want to quit, and, well, let's just say this job isn't what I thought it would be, but I don't see a better option right now." She asked him to explain. At first he was dismissive, reluctant to talk about himself. But when she insisted, something broke. He stopped typing. When he finally spoke, a story of disappointments, regrets, and unfulfilled dreams poured out. Nicole listened carefully. His past was interesting. His hopes for the future were also interesting. What struck Nicole most was the idea that the future could be interesting. When, in recent years, did the future seem to her like something more than an endless repetition of the present? Their conversation that evening led to many other and increasingly personal discussions. Not all of them took place in the office. There were lunch breaks on days when they worked regular hours, and dinners on increasingly late nights as deadlines approached. The more she watched him talk, the more obsessed she became with his lips. How it would feel to kiss them. Recoiling from the illegitimacy of that last thought, Nicole ended her trip down memory lane and turned her attention back to the quiz. Italy. Tom wanted to go to Italy. Just him and me. Leave the children with their grandparents. I said no. Wait, did I really say that? Perhaps, but more likely, I simply wore him down with doubts, problems, and reluctance until he gave up. What were those doubts, those problems? Reason for reluctance. It had nothing to do with Jake. I hadn't met him then. This was not related to the project at all. This happened much later. Was it related to work in general? With kids? With expenses? Having to pack and live out of a suitcase? Long flights? Jet lag? Unknowing of the language? It could have been all of this and 1,000 other little things, but honestly, I don't remember. As Nicole searched for more clarity in her thoughts and feelings, she felt something disturbing begin to rise. Her first instinctive reaction was to ignore it, to suppress it until she looked at the quiz again. Truth or lie? This is a test. She let the bubbles rise. It was probably all this and 1,000 other little things, but basically, I just didn't want to go with Tom. What would I do with him? I guess I just wasn't interested. Or, if I was wondering, for some reason I was struggling with it. I fought against it instead of fighting for it. The bubbles became a geyser. But it wasn't just him, was it? No, then I was also not happy with myself. I didn't believe I could keep him happy for 10 days. What would we do? What would we talk about? We knew everything we ever wanted to know about each other. What else was left to share? As for the future, well, it didn't seem any more exciting then. Talk about what awaits children, about the cost of college, if they can even get into a good one. Blah. Talk about what awaits you at work. Blah. Talk about. Blah, blah, blah. It wasn't just that I lost interest in Tom, although that might be true. I lost interest in myself. I lost interest in interest. Then something happened when I met Jake. I found him interesting. I liked that something interested me, and I liked that I seemed interesting to him. Nicole turned her attention back to the quiz. You gave up Italy. Yes, I refused Tom in Italy. What else have I refused him over the years? How many more romantic plans have I ruined? How many times have I pushed him away like a fly when he tried to hit on me, perhaps pitifully, but spontaneously, hoping to rekindle passion? And when he was depressed, tired, distracted, unable to be the spark in our relationship? When did I ever take the initiative? Nicole circled the word true next to the second statement and looked at the next one with apprehension. 3. Ever since we got married, you have been my only lover. Nicole read the statement several times, pausing on one word in particular. A lover. She silently repeated this word over and over again. Such a rare word in ordinary conversation. When was the last time she heard someone use it? What does it mean? Someone you have sex with. Once again, Nicole's thoughts went back in time, but not to the scene in the office, Sheila's kitchen, or any other familiar place. Instead, she remembered the hotel room. There was no slow seduction. No kisses on the neck, no caresses, no tender, romantic, hesitant kisses. Not like in the bar 2 weeks ago when they were celebrating the completion of the project. No, they came to this hotel room for something more. They hastily began to undress. When Nicole was left in her bra and panties, she was shaking, almost violently. She was nervous, but was it from excitement or guilt? Maybe from both. There was just plain old fear. Too, it had been a long time since she had shown her body to a new man. She was much younger, slimmer, and more beautiful then. How will a man see her now? Nicole was especially nervous about taking off the next piece of clothing. Her breasts, once a proud asset, were no longer what they used to be. As she prepared to free them, she turned her back to Jake, hoping the room would suddenly go dark. A shadow fell over her, but it was only Jake walking towards her. He reached for the clasp of her bra and unclasped it. As her bra began to fall off, she raised her arms to cover herself. Gently, he lowered her hands, walked closer, and looked over her shoulder. He gasped. For a moment, she thought it might be disappointment, but he quickly dispelled that notion. "You are so beautiful," he whispered in her ear. An hour later, when they finished, Jake was the first to leave the hotel room. He blew her a kiss before closing the door behind him. Hastily, she responded with the same kiss. It seemed a little awkward, but it also made her giggle. She couldn't remember the last time she giggled about something. Returning to the present, Nicole felt a little excited, but only slightly. She wondered how she could feel so differently about Jake back then. Now she wished that it was Tom who met her in some hotel and fucked her brains out. She also thought about it. Even before the affair, sex with her husband had become unimportant to her. Sometimes she expected him, but more often than not it seemed like an obligation, a formality. But when Jake made me take it, hold it in my hand for the first time, it was so alive. Why had it taken her so long to feel aroused by the sight of an aroused Tom, as she had felt aroused by an aroused Jake? Because Tom's arousal was a given, something expected, something she didn't notice anymore. Like a painting on the wall in your house, which after a while only guests notice. They say, "That's a beautiful picture," and you say, "Huh? Oh that. Oh this." I think that was how I felt about all aspects of my marriage at the time. Now that Nicole was desperate to get her husband back, her sexual thoughts were focused on him instead of Jake. But when she thought back on her encounters with Jake, she discovered that, aside from the guilt the memories brought, they weren't unpleasant. They weren't foggy either. I wasn't unconscious. I wasn't drunk or even slightly intoxicated. I was perhaps beside myself, but very present and aware. I was giving pleasure and receiving pleasure from another man. Not just once, but many times after. I remember this. Although the exact feelings are fading, perhaps I will always remember most of it. As if trying to banish the images from her head, Nicole looked around the room, her eyes landing on the quiz. Ever since we got married, you've been my only lover. I had extramarital affairs, a new sexual relationship that will stay with me forever. But Tom, All he has and will ever have is the knowledge that I cheated on him, and his imagination about how it happened. When we are together, he will think, doesn't she remember how it was with him? Does he compare me to him? Maybe I'll suggest something new and he'll think, is that what she did to him? What else did they do that she never did to me? Maybe he'll see a pretty girl on the street and he'll think, jokingly, if I weren't married, I'd... He'll stop, shake his head, tell himself to behave. Then he will remember what I actually did with another guy, even while I was married. And he'll wonder if I'm on the street at this very moment, sizing up some other guy, wondering what it would be like to invite him to a hotel. How long will it take him to ask before I take another? Lover. Nicole read the statement on the quiz again. She knew that the sexual aspect of the affair was destructive to Tom, but she also knew that he was not a superficial person. There had to be more to this statement. Lover. Someone you have sex with is fine. But that's all? Or, literally, someone you love. Emotional relationships. But I don't love Jake anymore, if I ever did. And I had boyfriends before Tom. He had girls before me. Why can't we just start over, move on? The thought of moving on brought Nicole to an old soul song. The woman sang about the train she was about to take to be with her lover. Lover. Sex, yes, but something more. Something worse. What? Midnight train, to return and find. Nicole realized that her meetings with Jake, even when they were just talking, felt like a break from everything else in her life. Maybe that was what intensified the sex when it finally happened. Lying in bed with Tom in recent years, Nicole always felt the weight of parenthood, finances, housekeeping, and so on. All these things were in bed with us. She was in another world in bed with Jake. A simple, uncluttered little world of Jake and her. A world where she was young again and light as a feather. We shared our little world. That's what it really means to be lovers, isn't it? Sharing a small world in which nothing else matters. This is the highest form of intimacy, isn't it? The song came to mind again. Gladys Knight singing about the midnight train to Georgia. The train on which her lover was traveling. The train that Gladys was also going to take to be with him. I would rather live in his world than be without him in mine. This is what Gladys chose. I also took the train, but not to be with Tom. No, I was the one who left. And not to Georgia, not home. No, I was leaving home. If I wanted to go anywhere else to change my life in any other way, maybe I could do it with Tom. Perhaps he could come with me. Perhaps it could be us together, returning to find a simpler place in time. But I never gave him this chance, this opportunity that Gladys received. I took the train to a place where Tom couldn't go. Train to the world with another man. Nicole looked back at the quiz. Ever since we got married, you have been my only lover. Tom didn't always do his best to keep our world simple, safe, intimate. He admitted that, but he tried harder than I did, and he never left our world, even when it shrank. He stayed with what was left of him instead of leaving for another world without me. Nicole lowered her pen to the third statement and circled true. 4. You would never have told me. I would never tell Tom about. What? About betrayal. About him. About Jake. It was another hard blow to the stomach. Nicole felt like she was suffocating, choking on something. Perhaps it was the irony of her situation. Here I am, in this room, with these legal documents, begging for release. But I started it. I filed for divorce first. I was the first to submit. Shaking her head with regret, Nicole remembered how it happened. Just do it, Sheila said. If you don't just submit the documents, if you warn him first and try to explain, he'll say something and you'll falter. That's what happened to me with Bob. I won't flinch, Nicole answered. I made a decision. It's a matter of, politeness, maybe, so as not to take him by surprise. Oh yeah, do you know what happened to Cindy? She mentioned Harry's divorce, thought they could work it out amicably, but he filed the papers first, hired a real shark as his lawyer. She was in the background the whole way. Don't give Tom the advantage. Take control. Control, Nicole thought. Taking control of your life, that's what it was all about. right? Maybe Sheila is right. I think. Still, don't you think that I owe him an explanation? Later, honey, maybe. There will be time. Besides, what is there to explain? Now, Sheila definitely had an argument, a stronger one than she knew, because Sheila didn't know about Jake. More importantly, Tom didn't know either. Nicole wanted to keep it that way, at least for now. After all, why hurt him? Someday he'll see Jake and me together and think we met after the divorce. This may hurt him more, but not as much as knowing that I cheated on him during the marriage. Just do it, Sheila said again. 3 weeks later, Tom was served with divorce papers. Nicole, read the fourth statement again. You would never have told me. Would you never say that? I never told him it's true. Dr. Silver recently asked Nicole about her and Tom's method of breaking up. The therapist seemed doubtful of Nicole's explanation for why she did what she did, making Tom surprised by the divorce papers and then not admitting to cheating when he asked so as not to hurt him was shit, wasn't it? Dr. Silver came pretty close to telling me that last week, I think. She knows. And I know now. I didn't want to tell Tom that I found someone else because I was ashamed. I didn't want him to know, or for the world to know, that I was cheating. After Nicole began the divorce process, she rented an apartment and moved out. Jake invited her to stay with him, but she refused. Let's wait until we can fully commit to each other, she said, smiling and playing with her ring finger suggestively. But what I really thought, or at least felt, was that nagging feeling of shame. It was how it looked. I didn't want Tom, the kids, or anyone else to see me as an easy girl who was already living with a new guy before the divorce was finalized. Plus, Tom might realize that this guy isn't that new. Despite having her own apartment, Nicole never accepted Jake there. She continued to keep a low profile with him. Whenever she had to talk to Tom, who begged her to come home, she continued to deny that there was or ever was anyone else. I kept telling myself that I had nothing to feel guilty about. Deep down, perhaps I did feel guilty, but it was again a matter of shame. Guilty or not, I should have just been honest with Tom, but I put my self-worth and public opinion above everything else. Not long after Nicole left Tom, her relationship with Jake began to cool. One of the turning points, she realized in retrospect, was the big conversation about the future. Will they keep their jobs, or will they look for others, perhaps in another city, perhaps closer to Jake's sister, a widow who needed his help with the children? But what then to do with Nicole's children and her sick parents? Will Jake and Nicole start their own family? How much money will they need to buy a house? This brings me back to the question of work. We talked about the future before, but it was just dreams. When reality hits, it hits hard. Suddenly, the grass on the other side, the side I crossed to, didn't seem so green. However, Jake was a great guy. He continued to treat me well, especially in bed. But sex also began to lose its appeal, maybe because I was starting to feel too full in bed again. All these problems were starting to clutter this simple little world I had escaped to. And on that long night, by the fifth time, everything seemed wrong. I was just sick. I've never wanted to have so much fun at once. 2, even 1, was always enough for me. Letting Jake work me so hard was like trying to compensate for something else that was missing. The magic that I felt with him before the divorce began. Maybe the magic that I once felt with Tom, too. Indeed, when the relationship with Jake cooled, Nicole began to miss Tom. Seeing him talking to another woman one day, she was surprised that she felt jealous. The children had not chosen a side, but she could tell that she might never mean as much to them on her own as she did living with them as Tom's wife. Just a few months after moving in, Nicole began to feel like she had made a mistake. Shortly after this, she broke up with Jake. He took it hard, but admitted that he felt changes in her that he didn't know how to deal with. After they broke up, he sent her a note saying he was leaving and that he wished her well. Returning from her memories, Nicole looked at the quiz. You would never have told me. Jake and I have always been honest with each other, even when it hurts. And even when I hurt him by leaving him, I did it as gently as possible, as respectfully as possible, with complete honesty. But with Tom, Nicole remembered another old soul song, a song performed by the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin, a song about respect. RESPECT better know what it means to me. When I denied Tom all those times that I had an affair, it wasn't just because I wanted to preserve my self-respect and the respect of other people, right? No, I've lost respect for Tom. Long before the breakup, in fact. This is part of what made it possible for me to cheat on him. Part of what made it possible for me to catch him off guard with the divorce. Part of what made it possible for me to be dishonest and evasive about my motives. The statement in the quiz did not address what happened. It was hypothetical. What exactly did it mean? Would you never say that? I would never. Oh, trying to get Tom back. After it was all over with Jake. If Tom hadn't found out about Jake, would I have been respectful, honest enough to tell him? Or would I bury my guilt to avoid shame? Would I keep the affair a secret, ignoring Tom's right to know so as not to jeopardize his acceptance of me back? You would never have told me. True, Nicole replied, circling. 5. Your name is Nicole. It was the most obviously true statement of all, but the words true and false were not written next to it. For these reasons, his goal was the most incomprehensible. Hoping to clear her thoughts, Nicole got up from her chair, walked to the window, and looked out. She saw buildings, streets, and beyond them, a park. Of all the parks, this one. As if looking through a zooming telephoto lens, Nicole felt herself being carried toward a park in the distance. Memory carried her there. Closing her eyes, she fell onto the stage. She arrived at the park early, not wanting to risk a possible delay that might cause her to miss Tom. She left him a message saying she would be here today and begging him to join her. She was sitting on a bench surrounded by blooming roses. Tom resisted the divorce. Nicole was sure that he still loved her, still wanted her. Of course, he would let her come back. It will be hard for a while, maybe, but the family will be reunited, and someday all this drama will seem distant and stupid. She laid out her jacket and purse on the bench, securing it against anyone who might try to share it with her. This was her bench today. Forever after, this will be her and Tom's bench. They will come to this rose garden every spring, sit on this bench, and show the world that they are still together. When Tom arrived, she didn't know what to do. Should I stand up and hug him? Should I shake his hand? While she was thinking, Tom sat down, not quite next to her. Tom, she said, I'll get straight to the point. I miss you. I've thought it over. I want to give our marriage another chance. Tom turned his head and looked around the rose garden. Nicole waited for his answer. He seemed to be struggling with what to say or perhaps whether to say anything. She reached over and placed her hand on his thigh. Tom, I'm ready to go home. He turned his head again. She tried to read his expression. He moved his legs, forcing her to remove her hand. When he spoke, it was as if from afar. Your message hinted. I thought maybe that's what you wanted to say. I have to admit, I was hoping that was why you invited me here. Although, his voice broke. He took a deep breath. Although, again he stopped. He seemed on the verge of breaking. She wasn't sure whether to say anything or let him deal with it. Suddenly, turning to her, he spoke again. I just have to ask you something. Again, is there anyone else? She hadn't expected this question, but having been asked several times before, she had a practiced answer. Moreover, now this answer was true. Now there was no one else. No, honey, she said, no one else. Tom looked down and began to cry. Her first thought was that he was shedding tears of joy, but then she saw that his fists were clenched. He looked at her, his eyes burning, and he spoke in a stern voice. This is the last time I listen to you lie to me, he said, standing up. Don't come near the house except to pick up or drop off the children, and even then, I don't want to see you. Stunned, she started to get up, but he reached out and waved at her. He took 2 steps away from the bench, then turned, his expression changing from anger to pain. Oh, he said softly, you can stop hiding with this Jake, trying to keep it a secret. It turns out that many people already know or suspect. I was just. Grimacing, he collected himself, looked back at the garden, then finished. Just the last one. Better late than never, though. If only you had come to me like this earlier, before I knew. Nicole was stunned. Tom knew. He knew about Jake. Somehow he found out. He gave her one last chance to confess to cheating, but she lied again. Well, not technically lying, the affair did end, but Tom didn't seem to know, which made her answer misleading. It was time to tell the truth. Admit the betrayal, explain it, apologize, and beg for forgiveness. But when Nicole opened her mouth to speak, no words came out, neither truth nor lie. She couldn't even shout Tom's name to call him back when he left. Apparently, Tom didn't find Jake, someone tipped him off. This meant that someone else knew. Tom hinted that many people. Was the public shame Nicole was trying to avoid now inevitable? Well, she thought, if she could get her marriage back, she would pay any price. The next day, she told Evelyn, her lawyer, to stop the process. Of course, ending the divorce would prove to Tom that she was repentant and serious about reconciling. She spent the next week with her parents, helping them, thinking about how to move forward. Maybe consultations? Yes, that's what you need. If Tom had agreed to counseling, she would have had the opportunity to apologize. He would have had the opportunity to vent his anger, and slowly their relationship would have been restored. When Nicole returned to her apartment, the light on her answering machine was blinking. Has Tom tried to contact her? Excitedly, she pressed play. Nicole, this is Evelyn. I'm afraid there's a problem. Please call me back immediately. My number. Rather, Nicole dialed her lawyer's number. Hello, Evelyn. This is Nicole. I just returned from my parents. What is the problem? Nicole. Hi. So, I talked to your husband's lawyer. Something has changed. He doesn't want to stop the process. I don't care what his lawyer wants. Tell him to tell Tom. Nicole, wait, you don't understand. It's your husband's decision. There was silence. Nicole's heart almost stopped. Nicole, I'm sorry. It's Tom. Tom doesn't want to stop the divorce. Nicole turned from the window and sat down. Truth or lie? What would have happened if I had told the truth that day in the park when he asked if there was someone else? Would it change anything? And why didn't I say anything when he left? You'd think I'd have a speech prepared like the one here in my letter, but the whole time it was happening, I never thought he'd find out. When it was over, I was sure he would never know. When he said Jake's name, I felt so stupid that I couldn't think of anything to say. Nicole didn't understand then, and doesn't remember now, what exactly happened from a legal point of view. Couldn't she have withdrawn the application without Tom's consent, and he refused? Or did he file some kind of counterclaim? Or maybe I actually withdrew my application, but he filed his own. Whatever. What matters then, and what matters now, is that Tom made a difference. One way or another, he has now filed for divorce. I found myself on the defensive, and Evelyn couldn't do anything to stop it. Now, here I am in this office, hoping that I can stop it myself. Nicole looked at the quiz again. Your name is Nicole. That's my name, yes. What about my last name? Tom's last name. My married last name? The one I'm trying to keep. Would it still be my last name today? She wondered if things hadn't cooled with Jake. If she was still crazy about him, would she even be here now? Why am I trying to keep Tom's last name? Why am I trying to stop the divorce? Because I love Tom. How can I say this after I told him and myself that I don't love him anymore? Did I lie when I said that? Was I just wrong? Maybe neither. Maybe I stopped loving Tom for a while, but then I fell in love again. Yes, here it is. I told the truth when I wasn't in love. It's just that now, the truth is different. Of course I love Tom now. All these feelings. I want it, damn it. I want him more than... How? Then I had it. When he was a sure thing, when he was mine, and I was restless with the desire for something more. Or at least something else. Now he is a decent, free man, and I am lonely, depressed, and scared. I'm ashamed, too, and I don't know any way to redeem myself in my own eyes and in the eyes of others, other than being a good wife again. Once again, the soul singer's voice interrupted her thoughts. This time it was Tina Turner. What does love have to do with this? What does love have to do with this? I want him. I want him to be my husband and me his wife. But do I love him? Or am I just adrift, desperate for rescue, swimming towards the nearest lifeboat? What is love other than a secondary emotion? Even though it might be love, how long will it take to be sure? And how long will it last this time? Where will we be in a year, 5 years, 10 years will we be back to where we started? Or let's go back to where we were when I discussed this with Sheila, or when I gave up on Italy, or when I got involved with Jake, or when did I start this divorce? What does love have to do with this? What does love have to do with this? On the other hand, Nicole thought, what does she have to lose by trying? If it didn't work out, if they had to break up later, it wouldn't hurt her then any more than it would hurt her now, would it? In the meantime, she'll be with Tom, she'll be able to look people in the eye, she'll be around the kids more, and Tom. Tom. What? Why should Tom give us another chance? How can he live without knowing if I'm really staying? Do I really love him? Do I really know how I feel? It's easy for me to say that I have nothing to lose by trying, but there are many potential downsides to it. Compared to this, what is the measure and likelihood of the potential reward? Who needs a heart when a heart can be broken? Nicole's eyes returned to the quiz in her hands. Your name is Nicole. The statement was followed by blank space. There was nothing to circle. How should she give her answer? Perhaps Tom wasn't expecting an answer. It doesn't make sense. He had to. Oh. Nicole remembered her previous answers. Oh, sure. Insight, understanding a terrible realization, thundered inside her. Like an earthquake, it shook her. The ruins of her old world, which she had hoped to return to and make new and whole, crumbled into rubble around her. The entire quiz leads to this statement. It requires a definitive answer. Only this answer should not be circled. It must be signed. My name. I have to confirm it by signing it. There was no signature line on the quiz, but Nicole knew why. She put down the quiz and looked at the legal documents spread out on the table. Yes, I have to sign my name, but not on a quiz. Nicole closed her eyes, lowered her head, and began to cry. Couldn't her answer be different? Couldn't she put down her pen, wait for Tom to return, and read him the letter she had brought, a letter that would explain the betrayal, acknowledge how terrible it was, promise it would never happen again, and beg for forgiveness? No, this would be the wrong answer. It's not about telling the truth about Jake and going through it together, is it? It's about seeing the truth about my marriage, what it has become, what has been lost, and what is not coming back. Maybe this is what Tom came to see, why he ordered his lawyer to change the situation, and why he has refused to talk since then. Nicole thought again about her last meeting with Tom in the park. When I watched him leave and could not speak, perhaps it was not only shock that made me mute. Maybe some part of me knew it wouldn't be fair to beg Tom to stay and listen to me. Maybe I knew that some part of me knew that I was deceiving myself about my feelings for him and how things would be if we got back together. Still crying, Nicole opened her eyes. She put up a quiz. However, she did not put down her pen. She'll need it a little longer. I thought that getting the answers right, passing this test, would mean getting another chance with Tom. A chance at least. I was wrong. To hope for this possibility would be to fail in every sense of the word, because it would be useless. That would be a lie. As Nicole nearly finished signing the divorce papers, a funny thought occurred to her. It was black humor. Still, she managed to smile faintly. For the first time in my life, I took a test and did not receive any reward. No A, no gold star, nothing. It was then, under the last document, that she found an envelope. It wasn't a standard business envelope like the one Tom had pushed her before leaving the room, the one that contained the quiz. This envelope was very beautiful. It was similar to the one Nicole brought to the meeting. In beautiful handwriting, Tom wrote her name on it. With shaking hands, Nicole began to open it. For the third time in less than an hour, she found the simple task of removing a piece of paper from an envelope incredibly difficult. When the letter was finally released, she began to unwrap it, but something seemed wrong. She realized that this law office was not the place to read the letter, no matter what it contained. She put the letter in her bag and left. Stepping outside into the cool winter air, Nicole walked and walked. She wandered aimlessly, it seemed, until she found herself in the park. She walked along a familiar path into a certain garden and came to a certain bench. She sat down, surrounded by rose bushes, devoid of color and leaves. She thought she had cried all her tears in the law office, but when she read the letter, the tears started flowing again. Dear Nicole, I don't know if you bothered to take the quiz or ignored it. In any case, you found this letter, which means you passed the real test. I'm sorry I put you through this. I know it must have hurt. After everything you put me through, it's strange for me to feel sorry for hurting you, but I do. And I'm grateful for that. This means that the anger begins to fade, and that means there is something else underneath the anger, some kind of empathy that may find another object someday. Hearts can be broken, but I've heard they can heal too. We'll see. I believe that you now understand that this divorce is not only about cheating. I don't think that's what killed our marriage. No, our marriage was already falling apart. Treason was just a mushroom growing out of rot. It was a poisonous mushroom, no doubt, but although I heard that it was short-lived, let's not further poison ourselves by picking at it. I'm sorry I didn't meet your expectations in many aspects. When we got engaged, I imagined that I would never be one of those men who would stop giving flowers to his girlfriend on a whim. They will stop writing her love notes. They will stop dancing with her. But these things, and too many other things, happened. When you said you were leaving me and started doing it, I felt like part of it, maybe most of it, was my fault. I still feel that way, but I can't accept all the blame. And no matter how right or wrong you were in being unhappy, I can't ignore how you abandoned me and how you lied to me even when you asked me to come home. I know you had a lot to tell me today. I know that you especially wanted to say 3 special words. The truth is that you don't love me, not in a way that you could trust and try to build a new marriage on that. I still love the person I married, but you haven't been that person for a long, long time. I don't see you ever being that person again. Not in my eyes, at least. I need to move on. There was nothing you could say or do today or any other day to stop the divorce. All you could do was stop fighting him, just like I stopped fighting him when I realized and felt the truth. I wanted to give you the opportunity to realize and feel it too, and you did. I appreciate it. It's ironic that this formal end to our marriage is something we haven't done in a long time, a truly intimate act. This is the last time our hearts and minds are united on something. I'm glad we had it in us to be like that at this stage. I wouldn't want either of us to live the rest of our lives doubting whether this divorce was right. I will always be sad about what happened to us, but the anger, the pain, I have to try to get over those feelings. I'm moving on, but I'm not completely gone. We will see each other, and I don't want it to hurt every time. We have children. We must be able to talk and cooperate. Ultimately, being honest and letting me go is something very difficult, but ultimately the right thing for both of us. In return, I will work hard to tell you 3 words. Not an I love you, but the best I could ever offer. I cannot say these words now, not with conviction, but I swear I want to be able to say them someday. I want to be able to say, I forgive you. Volume. When the tears had subsided enough for her to see, Nicole looked around the rose garden. She noticed the remains of a flower on the ground. She imagined that he had once been very handsome. Were we doomed from the start? Some things don't last forever. Maybe that's what love is like. No matter what the romantics say. Nicole's gaze wandered. She looked around at the rose bushes, so barren in the grip of winter. Or maybe love is not a flower. This is the rest of the plant. It goes through seasons, through cycles. Sometimes it is covered with green leaves and bright flowers. Sometimes not, and all you notice are the thorns. But if you feed it and water it, if you keep weeds and pests away, if you don't block the sun, then the leaves and flowers can return, again and again. Nicole's thoughts started to wander to what-ifs, but she stopped them. She got up from the bench, walked over to the remains of the flower, and collected them. On her way back to her apartment, she stopped at a card store and bought an elegant envelope-sized box. That night, she put the withered petals in a box, making a bed out of them. She took off her wedding ring and placed it in the center. Then she put Tom's letter to her, and on top of it, a letter that she had written but never read to Tom. She closed the box and put it away. Perhaps if her daughter ever gets married, Nicole will give it to her. It would be a strange gift, but it would serve as a warning. On the other hand, Nicole thought, such a warning might be the greatest gift she could give to a new bride. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one.